Let's look at the following scenario. Let's take somebody that has the recommended amount. And what am I talking about here? A while back I saw this. All this information, all I want you to look at is that the people had it significantly lower than the recommended 555,000. So let's go ahead and look at somebody that has 555,000. Let's take somebody that their monthly Social Security is 1,975. And let's take somebody that's got monthly expected expenses of 4,500, and they use a standard S allocation of 60% stocks and 40% fixed income. Let's go ahead and run these numbers now. Again, beginning balance 555,000. That was a recommended amount by whoever recommended it. Let's look at the 60/40 S allocation. Let's look at $4,500 a month. Running all these different numbers just to show you, which by the way, 4,500 a month would be a 9.73% withdrawal rate, except we need to take into account Social Security. So according to this right here, the average Social Security payment last year was 1,975. 1,975. If you take it at age 67, that's what you would get. Or let's look at somebody that's going to take it at age 62. It's 1,383. We'll change these numbers. So we got 1,383, and you're taking that in the first year at age 62. That means with these amounts, that would be a 6.7% withdrawal rate on this amount, taking out this amount, taking into consideration, taking Social Security the very first year, and we're going to give her 3% COLA. So of this 4,500, it's your expected expenses. You're going to get this much from Social Security, which means you'd have this much coming from your nest egg, and we're going to increase that by 3% a year. So we've run all the numbers. What we do on this channel, folks, is use the returns for the S&P 500. We're going to look at how it would have worked out for every single scenario with these kind of returns. Obviously, returns going forward are not going to be identical to any of these, but they're going to give us a range of what will probably happen in the future. If it's been doing it for 100 years, you're probably going to be in the same range as what's happened in the last 100 years. So what we're going to do is go ahead and update this, and it's going to do it for every single year from 1925 on. We're going to see what you would have left after 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. So let's go ahead and update it. Here's how the numbers would have worked out in the last 100 years. Right here in this box right here is how many times the last 100 years you'd run out of money in 20 years. 28% of the time. You can see the 20-year column going down through here. You see the 28.4, meaning 71.6% of the time you'd be just fine given all of these numbers. Let's look at the actual graph here. Would have had problems during the Depression years around 1937. Also in the late 60s, early 70s, and also around the year 2000. You can actually see the numbers right here. Going down through here, and we're going to go ahead and show you what's going on. Again, we'd had problems during the Depression years. We had problems during 1937. We had problems in the late 60s and early 70s because we had some down years, and then we had 2 down years like that, and we also had some problems during these years right here. Nobody knows the future, so what we want to do is play with these numbers a little bit just to show you how important the 6.7% withdrawal rate here is, how that's somewhat too high, especially if you start messing around with the asset allocation. If we go with, let me just show you what 1925 numbers are showing you. Right here you see you have, after 20 years, you have $11,959 left. You're almost out of money after 20 years. These are the actual numbers going down through here. This is what you would have had left after 10 years. You can see it right here, $334,000 after 20 years, 15 years right here, 284,000 right there. And after 20 years, 11,959, and you're running out of money. What is going on here? This rate is too high, at least too high to be comfortable with a 70 or 28% failure rate, which means only 71% of the times. A lot of people would be happy with that. But look at that. If you go between 20 and 30 years, now you've got a 45% failure rate and a 54% of the time you'd be successful. You can see some more reds going down through there. So what in the world could you do differently? Again, I want to show you this box right here again. People say, well, change your asset allocation. Okay, watch this box right here. Right now you get after 20 years, you have 11,959. Let's change the asset allocation. Again, we're using numbers. Just looking at 1925, you start out with 4 good years, and you got hit with the depression years. We go to a 50% asset allocation. You're actually out of money even sooner. You're out of money in 19 years. You'd think that wouldn't be the case, but the problem with it is this withdrawal rate is too high compared to what you're getting on your cash reserve account, your bucket account. If that bucket account isn't paying you what you're taking out, this is so crucial. This is too high. If you're taking out too much, but what could you do differently if you stick with the 60/40? You start out with some down years. A lot of people say don't look at the depression years. Let's actually look at the year 2000 then. That's within the last 25 years. Let's follow the boxes going down through here, right? This is a summary box again for the years, numbers using 1995 numbers. Look what just fine after each of these time periods. Look at 1996. Now you're starting to have a couple of issues. Why? Because you have one less year. Again, 1995, you had 5 really good years before you got hit with those. But if we just eliminate one of those years right there, look at what happens, folks. Now you're running out of money, or you're down to 168,000 after 20 years. If you go to 1997, you're down to 62,000. Again, 20 years in retirement, being out of money because of what's called sequence of returns risk. If you start out those initial first few years of retirement, you have some down consecutive years, that can be a real problem. Even as recently as 1998, if you had 2 really good years and then had these down years, then even though the market came back, look, you'd be out of money in 16 years. So what could we do differently? Obviously, if you took out less, let's do to 4,000 a month. How your money's lasting 20 years. Again, the problem with this is these years right here. You'd have to go down to something like, okay, now if you took out 3,700, then you'd be okay with a 60/40 split. Well, what else could we do if you really needed that 4,500 a month? If that's what you're planning on anyway. What could we do differently? How about whenever you have a down year, the very next year you don't take a 3% COLA? Right now we're running at 3% COLA. Let's say you take a negative 3% COLA. And what that would mean is the market's going up, you're going to increase that by 3% a year. The market goes down the very next year. Obviously, you won't know till the end of the year what that market did for the year. Then you take a 3% cut. How does that change everything? Makes it last 60, it lasts 20 years anyway. Again, what was the difference? Before it was running out of money in 16 years. Just doing that switch, going to your money's lasting at least 20 years. What if we go to a 5%? Still, money's lasting, running out of money in somewhat over 25 years. So in other words, the 60/40 split's not working too well for you. But again, look, considering this negative COLA, what else could you do? Folks, the real problem is this right here. No matter how we change this, we can go down through here and show you. Let's just stay with the 4,500 and the negative COLA of 3%, which is trying to help out. But watch what happens as we change the asset allocation. Right here, you got 158,000 left after 20 years. Again, 20 years in retirement. 10%, 89,000. 20%, 121,000. 100,000. 60,000. 50/50 split. You'd think it'd be more you move away from stocks after down years, it'd be helping you, but it really doesn't because this is too high. Now, let's go ahead and change it to 4,000. That's a 5.66% withdrawal rate. That's a lot closer to the 4% rule. Let's go back to the 60/40 and let's go ahead and update this. And now, right now, it's 28% with the 45. When you go down to 4,000, see how this 28% changes. Folks, did you see what happened? Going from 4,500 down to 4,000, from a 6.7% withdrawal rate to a 5.66% withdrawal rate. Last 100 years, 0% of the time would you run out of money after 20 years. The problem with before is the withdrawal rate was too high based on what you were getting on your bucket, your cash reserve over here. You were only getting 4% on that, and you were taking out 6.76. We saw that you ran out of money 28% of the time with a 60/40 split. We can play with these numbers all day long, but the key point is try to keep this closer to at least 5, at the most 5%. In this case, it's 5.66, and you're okay because you're taking negative COLAs. You don't take negative COLAs, This is the year 2000 that we have shown. No, we have 1998 shown here. You're out of money in just over 20 years. You go to a negative COLA, and you got plenty of money after 20 years and after 25 years. See the difference that makes right here? And also take into account negative COLAs. Whenever you have a down year, the year after that, take a negative COLA. In this case, we adjusted it down 3%. You wouldn't notice the impact quite so much. All those initial 3 years would be kind of problematic because you think, man, that would hurt, taking 3% less each year, but that would have your money lasting. Again, this is the key, the 5.66% withdrawal rate. So going back to our opening question, recommended amount 555, recommended Social Security, monthly expenses, looks like it'd work most of the time if you did negative COLAs, but also if you cut back from a 6.74% withdrawal rate to a 5.66% withdrawal rate. We also said we were going to run in changing Social Security. Let's go ahead and say instead of taking it at 62, let's take it in the fourth year. And if you take it the fourth year, you're going to get more. So let's go ahead and do this, taking it at 65. That 1975 would grow to 2127. That's a nice thing about Social Security. So that'd be what you get at age 67. That's the amount growing to age 67, but you're taking it at age 65, so you're going to get 1843. I'm just showing you all the different things we can do. What was it? I'm making sure I'm doing this. 1843. We want to change that to 1843. 1843. Let's go ahead and update this and see how much this changes. Interesting numbers. Those first 3 years, you're taking an 8.65% out. But then as soon as Social Security kicks in, you're only taking out 4.88%. The net result is 0% of the time in the last 100 years, you'd run out of money in 20 years. You can see it right there. 100% success rate, cutting back from 4,500 down to 4,000, taking Social Security age 65 with a higher amount as opposed to 62. So it looks like these kind of numbers can work really well if you consider taking the negative COLAs after down years and adjust it accordingly that way. Looks like it worked just fine with these numbers, 555,000, if you went down to 4,000. Again, folks, it all depends what's happening those initial years. If you could cut back to 4,500, again, that'd be tough, but landing on 4,000 a month with this kind of numbers, it looks like it'd work out in most every situation, as long as you adjust your COLAs. But that's what we do on this channel. Again, here's the graph showing you not running out of money at all. Folks, we're talking about minimal times here that this would actually happen, even doing 4,500. But again, you want to plan for the worst case scenario and 4,000 a month. Obviously, if you start out with some really good years, don't have the negative years initially, you can take out more than that because look at what the graph shows us, folks. A lot of these cases, you have way more than you. Here's 500,000. Here's $1 million after 20 years, starting out with 555,000. But you need to protect yourselves those initial years. Watch what's going on. Maybe take negative COLAs. Maybe take a little bit less than the 4,500 you're planning on. And it looks like 100% of the time you'd have a success rate after 20 years, and 98% of the time after 30 years. But that's what we do on this channel. We run numbers for you, and we just love doing it. We figure we're kind of unique that way. We set up all kinds of different spreadsheets to show you how these numbers might work out just based on what's happened with 100 years worth of data. Please consider subscribing and sharing this channel, and thanks so much for watching.